Awesome. Thank you for the intro. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for making it to the first session. Hope everyone enjoyed the awesome sessions yesterday. Have a high bar that's been set for today's sessions, but hopefully we'll be able to take it away. So as mentioned, going to be talking a little bit about my thoughts and the journey that we've been on the last 18 months at Eightfold to really showcase internally to our stakeholders internally, so CEO, CFO, COO, and the board, the return on the investment that they're making in customer success. So just a bit about me, currently a leader in customer success at Eightfold. I've been there for about 18 months or so, and we'll take you on the journey of what we've been able to do there, at least in customer success over the last 18 months. Coming from an organization, Salonis, where started in customer success, and many of us, I'm sure, have seen many transformations of customer success. So over the 4-year run there, we went from customer success managers to customer value managers, and then we ultimately landed on value engineer. And we transformed the pre-sales role, like the traditional solution consulting role, and merged that with the customer success manager role to have a value engineer from pre-sales to post-sales to reduce that friction for the handoff. So if you have any questions on operating models, let me know. Have seen quite a few in my run in SaaS, and then I started my career in consulting. I know my table was talking about that yesterday. We love that pipeline from consulting into customer success, so happy to share my thoughts on that as well. Personally based in Chicago now. I was out here in the Bay for the last 3 years, but moved back home to the Chicagoland area this summer, so it's great to be back in the Bay. I miss it every single day. All right, one question. Raise your hand if you've ever been asked this or had to think about this when you're presenting to your leadership team internally on what is the return on investment of customer success. Has anyone ever had to answer that? Okay, perfect. To get everyone excited and talking about this, we're going to take just a few minutes, and you're going to find a partner at your table, but it has to be someone that you haven't met yet. We're all here to network and meet new people. It can be a little bit awkward at first, but if I force you to do it, then hopefully it's a little less awkward. So find someone that you haven't met yet, introduce yourself. And what I want you to think about, at least for this first kind of 2 minutes, is one challenge that you have personally faced when trying to convey the ROI of customer success to your leadership. Maybe you're trying to convince them of another headcount, you're trying to convince them of a new AI tool to utilize within CS, right? Or even just to keep CS intact versus splitting it off through many layoffs that I know we've all been a part of. So find a new friend, make a new friend, and talk about one challenge that you faced so far when trying to answer this question. We'll give you like 1 minute. Hey, Liza, the timer doesn't start, just so you know. All right, just about 30 more seconds. Wrap up your thoughts. All right, perfect. We're going to go ahead and regroup. If you want to finish your thought, please. All right, does anyone want to share? Who has one example of a challenge that you faced when trying to answer this question internally within your own organizations? Anyone, just 1 or 2 shares? Yeah, right up front.
Limited data. Right? Limited availability of data to point to specific impact of customer success on revenue growth.
Yes, very fair. Very fair. Great one. I'm sure we've all faced that. Any other specific challenges that you have faced?
I mean, even if you have data, it's like hard to get enough people. It's hard to get the attention to like really explain what you do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a CSM job to help customers maximize the value and all that of what they're getting.
Of
But
course.
when you get 5 minutes with an executive, like how do you convey that for your book of 20 business or your customer base of 500 if you're a leader? And it's a lot of nuances. Well, this customer does this customer does that. Like,
Yeah.
so try to
Condense.
condense that down into like one voice.
Yeah.
Yes, it's really challenging.
Exactly. And I think about it as like in today's conversation, it's almost like CSMing ourselves, right? How often are we conveying the value of our product to an executive within our customers? But how often do we actually do that to ourselves internally and think about, I know some of the tactics we learned through storytelling yesterday, before you have a meeting with an executive, how do you plan the one thing you definitely want to say to them and hope that you get out of it, just like we plan for meetings with our customers. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I'm going to frame it in kind of like a timeline that I have experienced personally. Fortunately and unfortunately, I guess, I've been on both sides of the coin when it comes to customer success being extremely valued within your organization. My time at Celonis, right, was that. CS was the golden child, you could say, right? All the executives knew how much work went into expanding and renewing our business, and CSM's got a lot of credit for that, or value engineers, or customer value managers, whatever we were called. And coming into Eightfold, it was a problem that I knew existed. The new chief customer officer who was at Celonis with me and brought me over to Eightfold told me that customer success is not valued, right? And it was showing in our GRR numbers. They were below industry standards, right? We're still private though, so don't go tell everyone that. It's below industry standards, and it was a problem that the company knew that we had to solve, right, if we were going to keep scaling and growing at the rate that we were all hoping to become that generational company. And metrics like ARR per headcount were never even talked about or discussed or monitored or measured internally, and it kind of just exacerbated that feeling, not only in the numbers, right, the GRR numbers, but also with our cross-functional stakeholders and partners, that CS wasn't really valued. They had gone through a big layoff, right? And finally, they kind of came around to understanding if we want to keep growing, we have to secure our base with our GRR numbers, and they invested in hiring a top-tier chief customer officer, Rimpal Patel, who I followed over. And over the next 20-ish minutes or so, I'll kind of take you on that journey that we've been on for the last 18 months to get customer success into a much better spot, and what I now am proud of, a lot of the work that the team has put in to be in a place where we are really valued and everyone understands the impact that we're having on not only retaining our business, but also growing it. And a lot of what we've done, right, is try to kind of change that message into what our executive and what our boards really talk to, right, and how they think. So we've kind of framed into 3 core principles of what really matters, especially at a hyper-growth company. I think we all know, have been said many, many times, revenue, revenue, revenue. So how can we ensure that we are showcasing our impact on revenue of expansions and retentions? And I'll talk a little bit about that. Efficiency, I mean, I've never heard the word scale more times than I have in the last 12 months in my life, right? But it's a board level initiative, and we have to make sure as customer success that we are translating what we're doing every day into to how the board members and our CEO are speaking when it comes to us continuing to sustainably grow, right, without at the same rate growing our headcount. And the resource optimization, I mean, with AI, this has just been such a big key player for us, and we have organizational-wide AI initiatives that we need to make sure we're leading the front on in customer success to change that perception that CS is the leaders within the entire company on how we're actually driving this kind of do more with less or do more with the same amount of resources mentality that everyone is saying, but we have to be able to tie what we're doing back to that. And we can't do that, right, through talking about everything that we're doing. I mean, I know all of us, I'm sure it's so hard to be at a conference like this in customer success because your calendar is always back to back to back to back, and the to-do list is never ending, right? There's no such thing as crossing everything off your to-do list. So there's no shortage of activities that we're doing within customer success, but how we translate that into impact is sometimes where we fall short, and at least where we were falling short at Eightfold just 18 months ago. We were talking to the board and even our CEO around all of the QBRs that we were doing and all the health score numbers that we've changed from green or from red to green, right? Or all of the executive meetings that we've had and executive connects, right? Those were kind of how we were communicating up to our CEO, but it wasn't landing, right? Because he was like, okay, this sounds good. You're doing a lot of things, but I'm still seeing a below industry standard GRR. So how do we kind of shift that narrative and focus on the things that matter and actually communicate out the things that really matter at that level? So we started to do that, right? One of the first things that we did, tactically speaking, we've been saying a lot, CS needs to own revenue, so I'll just share how we're doing it at Eightfold. At Eightfold, CSMs don't have a target or a quota, right? And they don't even own the commercial aspects of the renewal. Account executives own both net new sales, and they're responsible for renewing the business from a commercial perspective. But where we are tied and we are incentivizing our CSMs is on NRR, obviously GRR being a component of that, a big component of that. We can't grow unless we secure the base. And we've made it really attractive from an incentive perspective for them to overachieve the goals that we've put for NRR. And we've built our business case with the CFO, right, that said, hey, if we can reserve this much budget for the accelerators that we've put in place, if our team achieves higher than what we've set out for the NRR, it will give us a couple extra points of NRR, which is well worth the additional budget that we're going to need to pay our CSMs a bit more for the added work that we put into it. So that was one thing that we did immediately, which really helped, I think, set the foundation for customer success managers to know, hey, a lot of change is going to be coming your way in the next 18 months. We can't keep operating the way we are today to keep and expect that GRR number is just going to be different tomorrow, right? And so this was one thing that we immediately did so that when all the changes started to be rolled out, upskilling, reskilling, unfortunately having to exit some CSMs and bring in people that aligned more with our mindset, which really shifts and changes a lot of the culture, right? At least they were incentivized at the end of the day that if we're able to make these changes and we do see the impact, you're going to make a bit more money in your pocket, right? Which I know we all know that money is maybe not as big of a motivator as the sales side, but it is still a motivator for us. So that's where we started, right? And then every initiative that we did, the NRR initiative is a good example. We kind of used this framing to make sure that everything that we did was telling the story back up to the CEO, right? And then ultimately the board. So we started with every initiative as what is the problem that we're trying to solve? How is this going to impact GRR, NRR, our executive relationships, et cetera? Then we told them this is what we plan to do, and here's the outcome that we hope that we're going to get. And if we get this outcome, then we will be able to see the actual business result impact of scaling, right? Or it goes back to the revenue, efficiency, or doing more with less. And so we tried to frame every initiative that we put in place into this problem, into this ROI storytelling methodology. And it really made us think too around, are the initiatives that we're going to be putting in place actually going to lead us to the business outcome of what we're looking for. But I don't want to over-rotate too much on metrics, right? Yes, they're important. They need to be top of mind for us. But there are also so many other assets that customer success bring to the organization, some of those more like intangible ROI value that I know we all talk about with our customers, that is also equally important that we are communicating and advocating for when it comes to the whole organization understanding what customer success brings to the table and not just the CEO. I mean, they are a stakeholder, but they're not the only stakeholder in this. And so what we started to think about is one of our biggest strategic assets is the voice of the customer, right? Every single one of our CSMs knows the problems in and out of the customer and what they're facing, problems with our product, problem with the sales motions, problem with the marketing messages and how they're landing, right? CSMs truly such a unique role in the organization to have the biggest voice of the customer, and we need to be able to utilize that, right, in order for the whole company to understand how important customer success is. And I think once you start to really lean into your voice that you have, it can change that narrative from CSMs are just the reactive people who are the firefighters. I know there's some stickers actually out there that says something about, and that's, you never want to be known as the firefighter, right? No one wants to be known as the hero. You want to be able to make sure that you're using that voice proactively within the organization, not always thinking about, oh yeah, CSMs will handle it. Anything that comes down the line is in their court. That's not the role that we want to play. And I think once you start to utilize that voice, it can help you change into being that like strategic voice that people come to within the company as ways to get input and buy-in on their projects. So we started to do that, right, and we implemented some changes. That perception started to evolve within Eightfold as well. And one thing that we did just to keep a pulse check, I mentioned this already, but through a lot of this change, there was, a lot of feelings that our customer success managers, we have a team of about 30, 35 globally, that we're going through. And so we wanted to make sure we have a pulse on them, because I'm a huge believer that happy CSMs will lead to happy customers. And if we aren't keeping a pulse on what on how they're feeling throughout all of the changes that we were putting in place, which you'll see on the next slide, some tactical things that you could do tomorrow, then I think we would have missed the mark, right? And there definitely were some ebbs and flows. Not going to paint like a rainbows and butterfly picture of all the changes and how happy all the CSMs were about them. But I think ultimately we were able to keep a pulse on it through some employee surveys and started to roll out some changes and redacted some of the changes that maybe just weren't landing well. So this is a lot, right? But the idea is I'll just talk about the ones highlighted in blue. But these are some of the things that we did on kind of the intangibles, I would say, to bring customer success into the forefront. So I've already talked about changing the compensation model immediately so that they knew that they would get compensated appropriately for the amount of effort and work that goes into expanding. And I've already talked about building the culture of trust, right, through understanding and having pulse checks on our CSMs. With the layoffs that we had to do, we made sure that the team knew, hey, this is the team we have in place now, right? And we are going to have to upskill everyone to get to the right bar that we need to get to the GRR that we need to. We also fully own both the good and the bad customer outcomes. Through this, we had to let go of some customers who truly just weren't in our ICP, right? Not going to be a good fit no matter how much investment that we put into making that. And we own that, right? We didn't blame sales for selling a bad deal, or we didn't blame product because they didn't follow through on an innovation that they promised they'd be able to. GRR is a company number, right? Heavily influenced by customer success, but we owned all of those outcomes together, right? Which just continued to like bring our bonds closer with those cross-functional partners, like the panel that we had on that yesterday. Primarily role in enterprise AI initiatives and other enterprise-wide initiatives. So there's a Project Andromeda, which is our enterprise AI initiative, right? That's coming kind of from like a corporate strategy and operations team. And customer success was the first organization to raise their hand to be a pilot in this, right? And it showcased just how strong our teams are, the quality of people that we've hired, and that we are a leader with every cross-functional initiative that's going on in the organization. A couple other ones, let's see, focused on raising the bar for the new joiners. So I don't know if AWS is still here, but another Amazon principle is the concept of a bar raiser, right? And so we introduced that within our recruiting process and made sure that everyone that we were bringing onto the team raised the bar from the current standard that we had. And everyone really knew that and started to see, if they looked to their left and the right, the people that we were bringing in, that they were also going to have to step up their game if they wanted to get us to that next level. And then the last thing I would say up there is just engage in solutioning with cross-functional partners. It's really, we see so much and we have the voice of the customer, and it's really easy to go back to your cross-functional partners and just complain or say, hey, this isn't working, especially our friends across the hall in support, right? How easy it is to say, oh, customer's mad, this is a problem that you need to fix. We tried to flip that script a little bit, because that's what was happening before, to say, hey, this isn't working, and here are some potential solutions that we think would maybe help you solve this problem together, right? And we did that with product, we did that with support, we did that with sales, we did that with marketing and some of the new pitches that they were rolling out. And what I've really started to see a change in is, instead of us just being known as like the problem child, the people that are always complaining, all of those organizations are now coming to our customer success managers and our customer success leadership team asking for our advice. Hey, we're about to roll out this new product, an AI interviewer. Can you be a part of our NPI team, right? Versus 18 months ago, we would have been begging to have a seat at the table for NPI, right, when it comes to rolling out a new product. So I think the more you can use that voice and come to the table with actual solutions for these cross-functional partners, the more they'll see you as a strategic partner of them and actually come to you. But I'll take a pause just for a second. Anyone have any other things that they have done within their companies or organizations outside of just the ROI numbers that we'll kind of circle back to at the end of the conversation, but some of those intangibles of how you've used your voice of the customer strategically? Yeah, up front here.
I first of all just got to commend you on this stuff. This is just spot on.
Thank you.
But I guess, and I'm not sure if it's in here,
Mm-hmm.
but I really think about connecting what you're doing with your customers in CS directly to your company's business objectives.
Yeah.
And the way I think of it is that your customer success fuels your company's success.
Yeah, 100%.
And so I'm just sort of curious in here, where do you actually connect it to that language back? Because you were talking about executive impact and that sort of thing. And it seems to me that when you speak in those terms internally, that's how then they understand that you are making that executive impact.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm going to end on that. There's a slide that talks about some tangible ones, but 100%, it's a great lead into how we have at least done that here. Yes, I paid her. I bought her coffee. Be able to do that for me. Yes, 100% though. We need to get back into do that as well. Any other thoughts around how you've done this? Yeah, up here.
I think one of the issues we saw is that we kept getting called customer support.
Yeah.
Customer service. And so just making sure internally the brand was, we are customer success. They needed to understand internally that it was success and not just support or just service.
100%. And we had to do that as well, right? And I think we're all still fighting that battle. And I think the more we've partnered with customer support on holding them accountable to the new high bar that we've set in customer success has really helped the rest of the company say, oh, customer support is actually doing their job. That's customer support, and this is customer success. So it's giving them the credibility, and oftentimes we'll give them praise, right? We'll shout them out on the general Slack channel around how they have helped turn around an account, and then the whole company is starting to see the impact that customer support also has in addition to customer success. Yeah, one more maybe, and then we'll have some time at the end.
One of the most impactful and difficult things we did was actually bring customer success into the close cycle for new deals.
Yep.
Because
Love that.
one thing the customer really wants to know is what's going to happen after I sign.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I love that 100%. And if you're not doing that, partner with your sales team and get a couple of good ones under your belt, and then they'll be begging you to join their sales calls at the end, 100%. I'll come back to you at the end, but we're going to just keep moving. So something that we really focused on too, and I think we talked about this just a second ago, is moving from just doing a bunch of stuff, right? CSMs are always so busy, and I think this is a really important role as a customer success leader, is making sure your teams are then being seen, right, for all the great work that they're doing. So these are just some examples, right? I know we like to get into tactical things here that we did to kind of move from a back office function into actually being front and center on stage. So one of the things I think I'm most proud of is when I joined Eightfold, my first week was our user conference, we call it Cultivate, right? And I showed up and there was not a single CSM that was on stage with a customer telling the company and all of our customers and prospects the story that I know the CSM put so much work into bringing to life. And so I was excited. Just in June, we had our last Cultivate, and we had 7 CSMs on, I think 7, and then there was one kind of side stage, CSMs on stage presenting with the customers. Not only does that showcase to the rest of the customers and the audience how important customer success is to them, but also we know there's a lot of internal people as well at those events, and they got to see the impact that CSMs were having. We call them value nuggets. You can call them whatever you want, but every day there's a new CSMs that's nominated to share an impact story, just like a two sentence, right? It doesn't have to be a big write-up, but just 2 sentences of something that they've seen work really well, or they've brought to life with their customers, and they actually specifically put that in the sales channel, because sometimes sales is the hardest critic to be able to convince about why we need to partner with them, not only at the end of the sales cycle, but also because they own renewals, right? And we need to make sure they're being brought in. And it's been great just like celebrating and culture building on all of the great stuff that we're seeing with our product. We're celebrating customer wins and all hands presented by customer success. Again, 18 months ago, no CSM was even thought of presenting as an individual contributor, and now they're on virtual stage during our all hands. And I've talked about this a little bit, but I've seen such a shift in cross-functional partners, product, sales, support, marketing coming to us and asking for our advice as they're rolling out new features. So as we kind of wrap up the story, really proud. It's not just me by any means, or I probably have the least amount. It's all the team. We've really seen it and the double-digit impact that we've seen in our GRR. And I think it's credited to a lot of the work that the whole company knows we've been putting into upskilling and re-enabling our customer success team. We have seen big increases in our NRR, and then we're actually starting to track, measure, and report out on things like ARR per headcount, which was something that was never even previously discussed. So I think as you kind of move into your next months or quarters, I just encourage everyone to start small with this methodology, right? Every new project or initiative that you take on, think about how that's actually going to impact the business outcomes that you're hoping that it's going to. Prove it, and then most importantly though, tell the story, right? Translate that one initiative into an executive level outcome this quarter, and I'll give you some to think about. So this isn't exhaustive, and I'll pause to see if anyone else has any examples, but these are just some ways that we've been thinking about translating every single initiative or a cultivation of initiatives back into executive level outcomes, right? So we've talked about it before, but revenue, right? GRR lift, that's the easiest one. So I won't go into too much detail there, and same with NRR growth. And then I think another great tactic is the customer success qualified leads, right, within Salesforce or your CRM. A great way to showcase and unlock those wins. Even if you don't have CSQLs, I think it's really easy every single time an expansion happens to make sure that it's known that the customer success team played a big role in that. Whether you're an individual contributor, right, putting the story out there, or a leader who's lifting up your team, you don't necessarily have to have the systems and processes in place to be able to do this, right? You can tell the story of how impactful the customer success team was in your upsells and cross-sells. Efficiency, we have put in a ton of automations and agents within our customer success team, and we've always translated that into how many hours that we've saved and celebrated that within a team. And you're speaking the language of a CEO, if we can say how, and especially the CFO, if we can say we've saved X amount of hours, right, by automating certain tasks. So we don't talk about how many tasks we automate, we talk about the impact that it's actually had. CSM coverage, these are just numbers, but moving from how many X amount of accounts to Y amount of accounts while keeping customer satisfaction and GRR high, digital touch points, and then some resource optimization. That time to value, I think, is something that we've really started to focus on our customer onboarding. So again, stop thinking about, oh, we've put in these 3 steps to improve our onboarding process, but how has that actually improved the ability to get to your next expansion from increased revenue, right? The faster you can onboard, the faster you can upsell. And so we've tried to tell that story with our CFO as well to get investment in onboarding technology. Churn prevention, and then of course that health distribution is the one that you have to make sure you're still kind of taking the next step. But maybe I'll pause for just a second. Anyone else have ideas on how they've translated what they're doing into that executive level speak or talk internally? I know you had something earlier.
I was going to say 2 different things. Like, one, I was going to just kind of piggyback off of what they both had mentioned, like the partnership with the sales piece.
Yeah.
Like being able to, we just recently partnered with our sales team, our new business sales team. My team actually works with client dev already in place.
Nice.
But being able to help them see that some of the investment is that being able to talk about client success team is actually a selling point. It's a selling point of being able to share, like, here's the things we've been able to do. And so we saw a lot of success with that.
Yeah.
Being able to bring our ROI just to our internal partners.
Yeah.
But then on the other piece of it, what we've done is we've created some different client-facing activities and events that we've done. And that has been huge for us to show the ROI of what client success is, especially when it comes to the revenue enabling. Because we've had a lot of in-person events where we've done these monthly virtual events that clients are coming to, and they're seeing that the attendance continues to grow
Yeah.
significantly.
100%.
And so that's not only showing our executives, but it's also showing our partners internally.
Exactly.
Like, this is the power that we have, and we just need to partner together closely.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. And I think like it goes back to the point earlier on a challenge, right, with data. Something that we tried to do is look at all of the opportunities that we've lost and all the opportunities that we've won and see, is there a higher percentage of opportunities that we've won when sales has introduced customer success into that equation? And it was hard, right? Like we didn't have the right data. So what we did, we're still trying to do that, but it's not up here because we haven't mastered that yet. But we've still made sure that every time we've closed a deal where customer success was introduced before, you bet the entire company knows that CS was introduced, right? And we were a big contributor into helping close that deal. So you don't always have to have the data, right? Yes, you can work on that and get it better, but just think about being a good storyteller. Yeah.
And just on top of what you were saying, because I think that's key, also tying into when you were mentioning CSQLs recently.
Yeah.
I think ultimately what you want to get to is not only measuring, consistently how you are impacting qualified leads, whether you have if you own the commercial relationship,
Yeah.
then you know where you are and how you're tracking towards it, and if you're handing it off,
Yeah.
then you also can show like this is how we've qualified it, this is how many we've qualified, this is you kind of show your progress. It's all about that communication. The other thing though, besides CS qualified leads, CS qualified advocates.
Yeah.
And the impact
Yeah.
of the advocates that you build when you turn that into a system and the impact that that has on revenue.
Exactly.
Coaching a client who literally, she implemented not only an advocacy program, but then tracked it and started showing the results of it.
Exactly.
She's reduced of their company 75%.
There we go.
Right? Because advocates are the
Huge. Yeah.
strongest way and the quickest way of getting more sales in. And so that now is something where like they're now looking to her to identify how they should go to market,
Yeah.
what their strategy should be, because
The
she's
impact
so
she's had.
successful in all of this stuff.
I love
and
that.
she's saving the company money and increasing their revenue,
I love that.
right?
Yeah.
So that just puts everything CS does straight in the center of it.
100%. No, I love that.
Builds on top of everything here. I love this stuff.
Yeah, 100%. No, and I love that's another really, really good idea. They don't have customer acquisition costs and the amount of advocates that, relationship building is still a core principle of customer success, and building those individuals into advocates who are ultimately selling on our behalf, right, is a great way to showcase to a new stakeholder we haven't talked about, a chief marketing officer, right? How can we showcase the impact that we're having on what they're doing in their organization? Love that. Perfect. So I think I'll just wrap with this, right? Like, you don't need permission to tell your story, right? Don't wait for someone to ask you the question, what is the return on investment of customer success? Everyone in the room has the ability to be the one who's telling that story themselves, right? So I would say if you don't tell this story, someone else probably will. So starting today, starting tomorrow, start thinking about the story that you want to be known for, your team, your customer success team internally, and start small. And I think it'll go a long way into to transforming or even just continuing on the path that you're on. So with that, I think we have a couple of minutes for any questions or additional thoughts that anyone would want to share.
If you can, put up the Slido, so we can have Slido for our questions. And while
There you
you
go.
guys are pulling that in, hey Jake, that was really good.
Thank
I just
you.
want to mention that the way you simplified the ROI story, just a simple 4 boxes of identifying the problem, and then what's the initiative, and then you have the outcome, and then
Outcome
tying
and
that to the
business
business
impact.
result. That's gold right there. Just to simplify, because again, I think we overcomplicate this stuff. All right, anyone got questions? If the Slido's not working, there we go. All right, what are some of the activities that you were able to streamline to save your CSM's time?
So yeah, this one is unique, I think, a little bit, and maybe we have other enterprise software solutions out here. We are a very high touch organization. We have about 150 million in revenue and only 30 CSMs, and 30 CSMs. So that each of them are managing, and only about 150 customers. So average ACV is like $1 million. And so each of our customers CSMs only have a couple of accounts, right? Anywhere from 4 up to 8 is the maximum account. So what we really started to do with automation and AI is thinking it more of like an assistant, right? So when you're preparing for a business value review or preparing for a value outcomes conversation, we've built GPTs to help support our CSMs in preparing for that and reducing the amount of time it will take, because it always felt so burdensome to start preparing for a BVR, right? Especially in an enterprise customer who they have tons of questions, tons of data to sift through. So we've really focused on, like, I wasn't really ever interested in, hey, we can automate this single one task, because we didn't have enough volume of that single task to really move the needle that much. But I was more interested in how can we make sure that we are optimizing the way we're preparing for meetings, preparing for workshops, right? And being able to do that those at a higher velocity to ultimately get to better GRRs.
We have time for one question left. I wonder if we do that top one, because the first one there, because it's probably quick.
Yes.
Where does CS roll in your org?
So we roll up into the Chief Customer Officer, who reports directly to our CEO. And our Chief Customer Officer is responsible for professional services and customer success. And then they have some advocacy and education within their remit as well. But I think, I didn't mention this at the beginning, and I'll just end on this, right? As we're all continuing to move about our career, I think having a very, very strong advocate at the top, right? And in this case, it's our Chief Customer Officer, who understands the importance of success, who's willing to go to bat for you and maybe ruffle some feathers if she has to, right? I think that's made all the difference in our success, right? And I wouldn't have come to Eightfold with her if I knew she didn't have the chops to be able to do that. But she has really helped drive and continued to make a seat at the table for herself, which I think has opened up room for the rest of us in customer success to follow suit. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question, but always look for, I know we know this, but for a strong leader to follow. I think that makes all the difference.
Well, hey, Jake, thanks for your time.
All right.
That was great.
Thank you. Yeah.
Leave the clicker up here.
Yes, sir.
Give him a big hand for that. Well, next up, we have Mary Lee, our Vice President of Customer Success at Global Relay, who's going to be